the effects of contact. We have massive amounts of borrowing. In some situations where we have a dominant language, we may witness language shift. Many examples of that: people in the United States have been even forced to give up the languages they speak, but language can be dominant in different ways. Now, in the States, the only growing language is Spanish, so probably not in this and the next generation, but since the younger population outnumbers the English speakers, the younger population speaks Spanish more than younger people speak English, it is conceivable, and but this is a bilingual population as well. So bilinguals who speak Spanish and English outnumber monolingual English speakers. That's the situation now. We don't know what's going to happen. But if number is important, a language shift towards Spanish is fully possible. Usually language shift goes with power and what is important in economic terms. Turkic languages lose ground in Russia because people give them up so that they can learn Russian, because Russian is more important for their career. This is what drives them. But in language change, in language contact, we also see the evolution of pidgins and the evolution of creoles from pidgins. So then from creoles, we go into what is no longer is a creole, a more settled form of language, what we think we speak. So those are in general terms the effects of change. I'll be showing more specific effects of change. A usual question that is being asked is what can be borrowed? And the short answer is anything can be borrowed. The research on borrowing, I'll concentrate on vocabulary in just a minute, but the research on borrowing has been trying to come up with outlines and limits of what can be borrowed, and in all honesty, people do admit that you can borrow anything at any time. The conditions that trigger that borrowing will be very different from case to case. So two extreme, I like this because there are two extreme examples of what can be borrowed and how mixes can appear. Two mixed languages. One is Michif, which is a language that is, was spoken on the US-Canadian border. It evolved via contact of between fur traders and Cree women. So the fur traders came from Europe and they were French-speaking. The Cree women were obviously native. The fur traders came and they were interested in killing animals and trading with fur. They started to settle down. The development I'm talking about started to take place in the 1700s. So out of these marriages between French-speaking fur traders and Cree women came out the language called Michif, which is an extremely peculiar mix of Cree and French, where the verbs follow the Cree system and the nouns follow the French system. And they do this very consistently. So it is not, so languages such as Michif completely destroy the hypothesis that a pidgin or a contact language has simplified grammar, or that you cannot, that you have to follow one grammatical system, because we still don't know to this day how they managed to keep apart verbs from one language and nouns from another language. But now if you, I have been very lenient with like the glossing of the morphology here, and there is so much assimilation going on in this form that it will take half an hour to explain it. But what you have to take is that, so in a sentence like take the tomato, you have a verb that means take a round object. In Cree and many Amerindian languages, these are called classifying verbs because you have a different word depending on the shape of the object you're going to be taking or giving. So take a round object with the Cree morphology. And then the tomato, I think even people who don't know French will recognize the French definite article and then the French form on the Latin form. So take the medicine, take liquid verb, and then medicine with the French gender. This is how the whole language looks like. So it's a flabbergasting mix. You're dumbstruck. Another such language is Voodoo, which has Bantu grammar and Cushitic vocabulary, and it's a language that's still spoken in Tanzania. You have maps of both. Okay. Despite the fact that anything can be borrowed, people still think that it's worth the while to at least map out what is most often borrowed and what cannot be borrowed at all. Maurice Swadesh was an American linguist, and he compiled the list that is nowadays known as the Swadesh list, which contains names of body parts, natural phenomena, things that are basic to human activity, such as eating, drinking, moving in a general sense. Some lower numerals, some pronouns, not all of the pronouns, but I, you, he, or like some third person. So the Swadesh list, what Maurice Swadesh thought about it, was meant to represent the basic vocabulary that is so important that it is always inherited, and even in a heavy-duty contact situation, it will not be borrowed, or very rarely borrowed. The Swadesh list was about 100 items at first. Nowadays, it covers about 200 words. People also realized that what is basic to Anglo-Saxon culture is not basic to many other cultures. So a lot of these, it is nowadays completely accepted that you need a Swadesh list for all big languages that you're researching. And Swadesh lists are used for lexicostatistics. This is when you try to assess the genealogical diversity or similarity of languages you don't always know. So when you go to field work in the Amazons, you go like with several Swadesh lists to see which one is maybe best for the culture you're researching, and then you compile that list, collect the items that people will give you, and then you run it into statistical software to see how many of these items can be thought of as cognate or not. And then it's also used for the dating of possible language divergence when you compare Swadesh lists for specific dialects. So this is called glottal chronology. I've given you the Swadesh list for Turkish and also for Turkish languages that you can look at in your free time. But I looked at it and it wasn't that much different from the English Swadesh list. So what it has is the pronouns, and then some negators, some quantifiers, and then some adjectives that are usually the basic adjectives. It has more adjectives than a Swadesh list usually has, and then some basic interms, some foods, and body parts. The body parts that are listed here are part of any Sweater's list. Head and bone and eye and ear and nose. Those are things that you usually lexicalize. And then you have the heart and the liver and then a bunch of verbs that are considered to be basic. So there is also the Sweater's list for 30 languages as a family.